Peace, everybody. So, the woke monster continues to eat its own. Seems ESPN's Rachel Nichols of The Jump is the latest to be smacked down by the woke machine, And it's unfortunate, but people didn't realize that when it was happened to what's his name that was in the White House last year, it was okay. If it was happened to conservatives, it was okay. But people didn't understand. That was just a test run. They was just practicing on those people. You know what I mean? And once you let that happen to others and you assume it's not going to happen to you because you towing the line and you following the narratives and the marching orders, here it is. It comes back and it bites you right in the butt like it bit Rachel in the butt. I think the jump took a hit not just because of Rachel. I think it may have taken a hit because people would probably lose an interest in the co-hosts of the show also. I think it's quite possible. That's part of it also. But yeah, man, Rachel was like the high priestess of wokeness on ESPN. It was, everyone knows that's why ESPN's ratings have been plunging as bad as CNN's ratings have been plunging because CNN became like, ESPN has become like a sports version of CNN, and it was just disturbing because people want to watch sports for an escape, but then for some reason they felt like they had to force politics on you, and it would have been fair had they gave you a balanced perspective, but they didn't. They just gave you leftist, liberal, Democrat talking points, and they literally pushed you in one direction. Like they were pushing you Democratic. They literally were pushing you. People were just like it was just Biden, 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 you know, and it was just unfair because a broke clock is right twice a day. And I think it was unfortunate that they took that approach because if you fast forward now, we're about to get into September. Some would say that we're worse off now than we were 2 years ago. Last year was an anomaly, but you go back to 2019. Um, Crime is worse in the hood. Aside from the free money, the economy isn't really doing that well because there's so much money printing happening that it's propping up the financial markets. So yeah, it's crazy. But when you listen to this phone call that Rachel Nichols was having with one of the people in LeBron's camps, it gives you a better picture of the situation, right? So it kind of makes her look like she was full of shit, but it's just not her. It's like the industry itself was full of shit, and she's just the first, I think, of many to go. But basically, the story is ESPN is pulling reporter Rachel Nichols from its NBA coverage and canceling her show, The Jump, a show which I liked watching personally. The network confirmed Wednesday the decision follows backlash over leaked comments she made about her former colleague Maria Taylor. We mutually agreed that this approach regarding our NBA coverage was best for all concerned. Rachel is an excellent reporter, host, and journalist, and we thank her for her many contributions to our NBA content. David Roberts, ESPN Senior VP of Production. Nichols commented on the decision Wednesday, got to create a whole show and spend 5 years hanging out with some of my favorite people talking about one of my favorite things, she wrote in an Instagram post. The jump was never built to last forever, but it sure was fun. More to come. In July, the New York Times first reported a leaked audio. Nichols, who was white, and said Taylor was only chosen to be the sidelight reporter for last year's NBA Finals because she's black. If you need to give her more things to do because you're feeling pressure about your crappy long-time record of diversity, which, by the way, I myself know personally, like, go for it. Just find it somewhere else. Find diversity, but just not at the expense of my job. But when you look at ESPN, think about that. The diversity isn't black white diversity. The diversity, they must be talking about male female, because if you look at ESPN shows, I mean, there are men of color all over ESPN, from Keyshawn to Jalen to Stephen A. You know, there are people of color on ESPN. Maybe in the office there aren't. I don't know. ESPN Radio. I know you got Chris Canty on the air. So um, I don't know. I just think it should be about qualifications and credentials, not necessarily race or gender. And I think that's where the problem arose. And but yeah, if you need to give more things, just find it somewhere else. Several days later, ESPN benched Nichols from reporting on the sidelines of this year's NBA championship series, but she continued to cover the series on the jump, and later reported on this year's summer league tournament. Rachel also apologized for the comment on her show, saying, "I don't want to let this moment pass without saying how deeply, deeply sorry I am for disappointing those I hurt, particularly Maria Taylor." Last month, Taylor also parted ways with the network after both sides failed to agree on a contract extension. Now, next, this is the audio that was leaked, where Rachel Nichols was speaking to someone. Take a listen. Actually, so Adam Mendelson, who's a spokesman for LeBron James, he says, "I'm exhausted." He said, "I don't know, I'm exhausted. Between Me Too and the Black Lives Matter movement, I got nothing left." So you see, so although the NBA has Black Lives Matter, if you notice, even during the NBA Finals on TNT, behind Shaq and Kenny and them in the corner, they had Black Lives Matter. All along the courts, they had Black Lives Matter. But anyone knows who's following now sees how fraudulent Black Lives Matter is. Anyone who took the time to read the mission statement on the Black Lives Matter website saw it had nothing to do with the upliftment of the black family, the nuclear black family. They actually say they want to disrupt the concept or the idea of that nuclear black family. And case in point, how many times 50 people have to get shot in Chicago, 16 people shot in 2 hours in New York? You don't hear a peep from Black Lives Matter at all. Kids shot in McDonald's drive-through in Chicago, kids shot in McDonald's drive-throughs in Georgia. You don't hear shit from Black Lives Matter. But let a cop sneeze on a black man, you're gonna have Black Lives Matter out. And they out here, they're literally bullying people. People are eating food. They're coming up to people, forcing people to say Black Lives Matter and all this other stuff, but then we turn the blind eye to it. One more thing that I'm going to say, and might trigger some people, but if you could just listen to the logic and the facts, look how they compare the summer of 2020 riots, right, and those protests where buildings were burned, people died, you know, compared to January 6th. Last year lasted weeks, if not months. This thing had lasted a few hours January 6th, but they make it like it's the new 9/11. So the media had a lot to do with this. The media gave you this movement as something for you. So maybe Rachel and ESPN and everyone was fooled, or everyone was pressured and bullied into conforming to this movement. And now we see, even though Black Lives Matter didn't prevent from one of the founders to buying a mansion in Calabasas, buying homes in Caribbean islands. And where are they? Some of the leadership quit, and they're nowhere to be found. Actually, they were never invited into the White House to move forward with any agenda, mind you. And shameless plug, I have to say, what's up with the White House meeting with Ice Cube to discuss his platinum plan for Black America? He got an invite into the White House in the last administration, and he caught flack for it. Meanwhile, they said we can do more when we get into the White House. They're in the White House. It's going on September. Crickets for Ice Cube. So so right now you can see ESPN showed their true colors. It's not just Rachel. ESPN is full of shit. That's why the ratings are crashing, just like CNN. They're also full of shit. Look, Nickelodeon gets more ratings than CNN, you know? But Adam Mendelsohn, who's LeBron James' spokesman, this is why you see LeBron James is super woke. Kobe played ball. Michael Jordan says Republicans wear sneakers also. But they made sure to put LeBron up front, to call that guy a bum, to promote JB, to get him into the White House. But now, how are the conditions for us in the black community? Some would say worse. So, again, maybe LeBron was forced into being, not to say a puppet, but an agent. But when you look at Adam Mendelsohn, that man is telling you, I'm exhausted between Me Too and the Black Lives Movement matter. I got nothing left. These people know these things were brought about to create a social change, not for the betterment of society, for a political change to get somebody into the White House. And when you look at what's happening to the country, it's like, wow, we probably flying in ISIS and Taliban members first class. You know what I mean? So we're gonna go back a little bit to this, you know. And Rachel laughs, been thinking about it. You could frame it almost, you could actually generate a really interesting conversation about how it's just so very white male for them to turn two women on each other to compete over one spot that they're dangling over them. Right. A broader conversation about all the spots that should be under consideration. There isn't just one seat at the table for a minority of whichever version. This week we're trying to please. If you think about it, this is precisely the problem we've been talking about for a long time now, which is white men. It is an example of the one black person in the boardroom. You don't get to have a black woman in a prominent spot and feel like, okay, the whole work is done. We're done. And you certainly don't get to say, okay, we have a white woman, we have a woman in a critical seat, and now that we're going to put a black woman in that same seat, the question is, what are the other seats that white males, what about the other seat that white males are in? They should be under consideration. Right. But still, again, Mendelssohn is still talking race with Rachel. You know what I mean? So it's like if they're going to take Rachel's seat, then they need to look at those white male seats, you know. completely hypocritical, you know. But yeah, man, that's what happens with race. It comes back and bites you. All that race talk, it just comes back and bites you. But Rachel will land on her feet, man. Rachel will be all right, whether she goes to another network or she pops off a podcast. She will be fine. But yeah, don't be too woke, man. Today I was watching the Knuckleheads podcast, my favorite sports podcast, the Knucklehead podcast with Darius Miles and Quentin Richardson. They had the legendary Big O, Mr. Oscar Robertson, on. And Darius Miles mentioned something to him. He asked Mr. Roberts about, back in the days when he was at the forefront of social justice and he was talking about Black Lives Matter. So just the fact that Darius is still mentioning Black Lives Matter shows you a disconnect between um, valid information, because I wouldn't say that Black Lives Matter is that organization that is really what we need to be using as an example of something that the black community can use as progress, because again, they are not about or for the black family. And if anyone knows anything right now in society, that's what we need: strong black families out there. But that's it for now, man. Appreciate everybody. Subscribe, hit that like button. I appreciate every single subscriber that I have and everyone taking time to watch my content. Be safe out there.